Time Trapper Origins. The DC supervillain is the greatest enemy of the Legion of Superheroes, and he casually toys with time to wreak havoc. What is more intriguing than the concept of time in comicverse? Well, in the DC comics, I'd say Time Trapper is even more fascinating than the concept of time. He is one of the most mysterious supervillains, and even more interesting is that he lives at the end of time. He wanders around building strange traps and puzzles for superheroes, especially the Legion of Superheroes. Nobody knows his real identity, his name, or his face. Actually, we don't even know if he is even a dude. The Time Trapper is one of the most intriguing characters one can even encounter in any comic book. So today we will be exploring his origins. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Origins and various story arcs of the Time Trapper explored. The Time Trapper initially appeared in the comics as a warlord from the far future who created an Iron Curtain of Time. He created it to block the Legion of Superheroes from entering their future. This was really just him paving the way for his ultimate goal. This ultimate goal was that he wanted to get into the Legion clubhouse and take the concentrator. This was a super weapon that could tap into any energy source in the universe. To be able to get the location of the concentrator, the Trapper pretended to be the commissioner of the science police and tortured the Legionnaires psychologically in the hopes that at least one of them would fold. All of this was cleverly done under the guise of conducting trials to determine whether the heroes were qualified enough to be on the team and have access to the top secret information related to the defense systems of the United Planets. Lightning Lad foresaw this situation and decided to fool the Trapper by randomly asking the Legion to build the real concentrator. The Time Trapper was sent to the clubhouse, but couldn't find anything there and returned empty-handed and quite obviously enraged. In this anger, he fired a hail of dark stars toward the planet of the Legion. Fortunately for the Legion, the concentrator only needed to discharge once to divert the star assault and protect everyone. The Time Trapper lives at the end of time, where he is looked after by Glorith of Baldur, one of his henchwomen in a barrage of slaves. With the exception of Superboy and Brainiac 5, who were trapped in a distant future because the Trapper had used this Iron Curtain of Time and trapped them, the Trapper sent Glorith to de-age the rest of the Legionnaires into children using magic. Unfortunately, this strategy failed since the infant Legionnaires were even more difficult to manage. The Trapper killed Glorith for making the infants uncontrollable. At the same time, Superboy and Brainy managed to escape the Iron Curtain of Time and return to the 30th century. The Time Trapper realized that they had reached an impasse, so he chose to bargain with the Legion. The Legion would be required to construct a working spacecraft with which he could fly off-world, and in exchange, he would use his powers of time to age the Legionnaires back to their original ages. The Legionnaires kept their end of the agreement exactly as decided, but what they failed to disclose was that they had placed a force field around the Trapper's spacecraft, which would prevent him from running away. Instead, it left him stuck on a lifeless planet. The Time Trapper freed himself from the barren world due to Pulsar Stargrave's devious plans. He then attacked an older Superman during the Man of Steel's journey through the time stream 100,000 years in the future and raised the Iron Curtain of Time against the past. This forced Superman to only move forward through time. The sadness that filled every single remnant of his old existence passed him by while outliving everything and everyone who had ever held significance for him nearly overwhelmed Superman as he went through the time stream across leaps of millennia. The Trapper wanted to break his willpower in retaliation for his earlier losses from what he had been a member of the Legion as Superboy. Superman acquired an almost suicidal death wish in a time period further into the future than he had ever traveled before. Thankfully, before anything could happen, Superman was carried beyond the end of time on the tail of an oncoming comet. This helped him relive his whole existence up to the point of his departure through time. Superman could only explain using a theory that states that time is actually a recursive loop that continually wraps loops in on itself, which allows him to go back and relive his memories. Later, we see that the Time Trapper created the robotic assassin known as Molecular Master, who had the ability to manipulate matter. He sent the Molecular Master to assassinate the Legion of Superheroes and to steal the Miracle Machine from the Legion's headquarters. While most of the Legionnaires were vanquished by Molecular Master, he was unprepared to face the newest member of the Legion, ERG-1, who would soon take on the more famous role of Wildfire. Funnily enough, the Legion did not know that the Time Trapper was the one who created Molecular Master until years after this incident. In another incident, the Green Lantern Corps from the 30th century decided to stop the Time Trapper's threats and fight a rather climactic battle. However, the Trapper seems to always be a step ahead of them and use the energies of their willpowers from the power rings of the superheroes to single out all timelines of the 30th century. This led to the erasure of the Legion and their universe from its very existence except for that of Earth AD. Green Lantern from the future in Sector 2814 planet Xenophobe, who was a refugee from the Legion's timeline dubbed Father Time, to entice Superman to look into alterations that have taken place in the 30th century which are different from what he had remembered. As a result, Superman fought with Jackson the Mighty, who could also been a future descendant, over ownership of his suit, exchanging punches that produced enough power output into Xenophobe's power ring in order to reverse the Time Trapper's destruction. The Time Trapper realized that there are 5 Legionnaires who are present in every future timeline where he eventually fails to win and conquer the universe. He also predicted that their existence would ultimately result in his own ruin. So, he got Superboy, Saturn Girl, Karate Kid, Chameleon Boy, and Sun Boy out of their linear time frame of the 30th century. He took them out 4 days into the future of this present, which was light years away, into his secret lair, presumably end of time. At the lair, the Trapper revealed his plans and paused time, enabling him to fight all 5 of them in 5 distinct parallel timeline branches concurrently and individually. Now, Time Trapper, having gained superhuman strength and becoming nearly invulnerable from the distortion of time, was about to end their lives when Saturn Girl telepathically spoke with Superboy and Boy of Steel and told them that the hourglass on his body was the source of Time Trapper's power. The Time Trapper pulled the Legionnaires back in time when Superboy broke the hourglass and ended up at the moment when the Time Trapper picked them out. The Time Trapper, on the other hand, appeared to have been thrown into the Red Sun's corona as a result of the unexpected resumption of time on his end. However, Time Trapper survived, resulting in the disbanding of the United Nations in Superman's age. As a result, nuclear war soon followed. This changed the intended direction of the timeline of the 30th century into a darker era where the Earth was divided into a few hyper-militaristic superstates that were always at war with one another and other sapient beings inhabited worlds. The United Planets was not created as a result, but the Legion persisted as a more guarded, covert peacekeeping group. Superboy by then had realized that the future had changed from what he remembered from his journeys into the time stream and persuaded other Legionnaires to travel with him to the late 20th century, which had been discovered to be the source of a significant time flux by Brainiac 5. In the 20th century, Superboy and the Legionnaires followed and tracked a man in a trench coat who, as it turns out, was the Time Trapper. Before attacking the Legionnaires with a Red Sun radiation weapon, the Trapper admitted that he was to blame for the time flux, and then he disappeared to his castle at the end of time. They followed the Trapper and stormed into his fortress after the team had reunited in the 30th century. There, the Trapper revealed that he is a renegade controlled who advocated for his race to use its enormous psychic and technological power to control the very fabric of time. The Time Trapper also revealed that one of his followers was a renegade controller who had once used a Sun Eater to attack Sol, which indirectly killed Feral Lad. The Sun Eater had later tried to use a simulation of Feral Lad's ghost to gaslight Superboy in order to take over the Kryptonian's body. The other renegade, however, was only limited to advocating the use of his powers for corporal conquest. The reality-bending miracle machine, which the Time Trapper created, was the greatest invention of his people, and he attempted to use it to rewrite the whole history of the world in his own image as if he was God. However, the Legionnaires focused their combined willpower against the Time Trapper's highly developed alien psychology. Eventually, they overcame the machine's control and forced it to undo the temporal distortions created by the Trapper. They then banish him to the other dimensional plane consisting of his fellow controllers, where his own race could administer justice to the deviant as per their laws. The Time Trapper used the last of his strength to escape the domain of the controllers and travel to other spatial planes, where he regenerated his powers and devised a scheme to exact revenge on the Legion. The Trapper waited for an opportunity to isolate a sizable number of Legionnaires in a different time period because he understood that the Legion would be most vulnerable if its core membership roster were spread throughout numerous periods. This plan came together when the Legionnaires discovered that Superboy's mind had been overwritten with a copy of Ultra Boy, who was thought to be dead. A group of Legionnaires, including Lightning Lad, Saturn Girl, Karate Kid, Phantom Girl, Dawnstar, Block, and Superboy himself, had to go back in time to the 20th century to Smallville, Kansas to find out what happened. When the Legionnaires arrived, the Trappers set up the Iron Curtain of Time to prevent them from employing time travel techniques to return to their original age. He also made himself known to take pleasure in his opponent's misery. I mean, obviously, he is pretty much an undefeated supervillain with a really successful plan. To make matters worse, the Legionnaires were already under surveillance by the American military as a result of Superboy's recent interference with an A-bomb test while under the influence of drugs. The Trapper sent a new Molecular Master to kill the Legionnaires, which further worsened their situation. Molecular Master was defeated by the Legions, but the destruction of the android resulted in a huge explosion that rendered the majority of the Legionnaires comatose. Only Phantom Girl was still awake when she transported Superboy and Dawnstar with herself to her homeworld Bitzel. This tricked the Trapper into believing that the 3 Legionnaires had died because Bitzel was not part of the linear time-space continuum. In contrast, those 3 discovered Ultra Boy. He was in stasis within the interdimensional limbo. They freed him and then banded together with the honorary Legionnaire Insect Queen to free the other Legionnaires from military imprisonment in the 20th century. The Legionnaires used the Bitzel dimension as a time travel stopgap while avoiding the Iron Curtain of Time and gathered those who left Smallville, and then they all traveled to the end of time and broke into Time Trapper's castle while he was preparing his attack on the main Legionnaires who never left the 30th century. The Time Trapper was aiming a laser cannon at the Legion when Phantom Girl deflected it. She presumably vaporized the Time Trapper in the blast emission from the barrel. However, Lightning Lad knew better and did not think that the Trapper was dead because there is no way that this super smart supervillain would not have protections for his recovery in case of conditions of oblivion. Unknown to history, the Time Trapper was found and imprisoned on a prison planetoid, Takrin Galtos, for his long history of terrorist offenses. A servant of darkness who has been cloned from the new god Orion assaulted him in his cell during this time in prison in an attempt to take his power so that his master Darkseid could use it. When Takrin Galtos was attacked, the Legionnaires Ultra Boy, Phantom Girl, Mon-El, and Shadow Lass arrived at the rescue. When they arrived, they discovered a scared and worn out Time Trapper amidst the wreckage, reduced to rambling erratically about how darkness is taking his power. This Time Trapper was eventually revealed to be a proxy of the real Trapper who lived at the end of time. The controller was punished by the Time Trapper as a result by aging him to fine dust. After an incident named Crisis, which was revealed by the Trapper to have been an incident that had endangered all of reality, including his own, he traveled through time 1 million years in the past and created a pocket universe. This pocket universe resembled the reality of previous Earth 1. This was all part of an elaborate plan to defeat the Legion. This plan resulted in the death of Superboy from the reality. This enraged several of the Legionnaires, who then journeyed to the end of time to murder the Trapper after witnessing him manipulate events and killing Superboy. They seemed to have a successful battle as Infinite Man appeared to have killed the Trapper by pushing him back into the beginning of time. Later, it was discovered that the Trapper did not die and was now existing within Mon-El's mind. When Mon-El learned of this, he overthrew the Trapper. However, this resulted in a change in the 30th century, with Mordru taking over. Glorith, who was now one of his wives, attempted to imitate the Trapper's behaviors as a way to remove Mordru from his position of authority, but she was too late to realize that the technique was lethal to the one imitating the action. The Trapper was able to come back to life in the 30th century as a result of this, but his attempts to regain power caught Glorith's notice. Glorith went to the pocket universe the Trapper had created and attempted to kill him by eating his strength, essentially taking over as the new Time Trapper. However, Glorith's attempt to change history caused the death of Valor, who was the replacement of Mon-El and Superboy. which allowed the original Time Trapper to be brought back to life. Glorith is then punished by the Trapper by being made to relive her last battle with the Legions again and again while he drained her power. Quite an evil mastermind move if you ask me. The Trapper made a replica of Valor in the 30th century and sent it back to the 20th century to replace the original Valor, who was dead at the time because he needed Valor to motivate the Legion's founding in order to prevent Mordru from gaining control. This and the production of temporal replicas of the Legion, they were thought to have been cloned, caused the chronology to become so unstable that even the most insignificant changes could cause enormous changes in the timeline. The timeline was further disrupted as a result of Mordru and Glorith gaining the ability to alter reality according to their whims. Mordru and Glorith try to recapture Rock Kryn because they know that he is of crucial value, but they do not know why. However, he escapes and flees to the Infinite Library where all of the historical information about the entire universe is kept. The Trapper, who is revealed to be a version of Rock Kryn from the future, tells Rock Kryn that some of his actions have resulted in him being changed into something unrecognizable. This happened because he temporarily went insane due to the erasure of the history he belonged to, and his efforts to restore it only made things worse. The Time Trapper persuades the Legion that there is only one way to survive the 0 hour. The way to do that is for the temporal clones to join with their current day counterparts. This results in him being killed by Parallax Howl at the end of time. However, the Time Trapper is still there in post-0 hour with all of the memories of the past Time Trappers, although his identity changes. According to Brainiac 5, sentient alternate timeline rebelling against ours, his own history changes. I'd guess even his identity could alter as the true timeline marches on.
I will remake this world in darkness.
Time Trapper was a handful for the Justice League in the animated movie JLA Adventures Trapped in Time. In the film, we start with the present day situation. We see Lex Luthor with the Legion of Doom. They are shown attempting to employ cryogenic rays from orbiting satellites, which would lead to an increase in the size of the polar ice caps in the Arctic Ocean. This would further lead to a drastic decrease in sea levels and cause new islands to form which they could dominate. Superman and the Justice League face the Legion by dividing their resources to combat the Legion and take down the satellites and save the planet. Robin deliberately crashes the Batwing into the array of satellites during the subsequent space fight. Captain Cold, refusing to concede defeat, overloads the last satellite, causing it to fall back onto the Earth, thus burying Lex Luthor in a sheet of ice just before exploding. The League believe that they won and that Luthor is no longer alive. We then move to the utopian 31st century where Dawnstar and Karate Kid are visiting a Justice League museum. They learn that Luthor was found unearthed from the ice and put on display in the 29th century. He had been in a state of suspended animation while trapped in the ice for almost a millennium. Luthor is accidentally freed by Karate Kid and he awakens nearly 1,000 years after his previous awakening. Luthor then investigates the museum and learns about Superman's actual identity. He then finds an ancient artifact called the Eternity Glass, which can be used to alter the course of time and space. He then froze Dawnstar and Karate Kid using Captain Cold's weapons from the museum. He proceeded to release Time Trapper and command him as his servant. This allowed him to use the Eternity Glass in order to return to the time when he last battled the League. While Luthor prepared to kill Superman, Dawnstar and Karate Kid escaped and followed him. After reassembling the Legion of Doom, Luthor makes the Time Trapper send some men back in time to stop the Kent family from adopting baby Kal-El from Smallville. To stop them, the 31st century heroes go to the Hall of Justice in Washington, D.C., where they enlist the Justice League's help. Following a miscommunication, they ask to use Wonder Woman's lasso of truth to confirm their story. While Superman and the rest of the members of the League work to stop Luthor's Legion in the present, the Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg go back in time to stop Bizarro, Cheetah, Solomon Grundy, and Toyman from sending infant Kal-El into space. The Legion of Doom sends Kal-El's ship away from Earth in spite of the Justice League's best attempts. Due to this, there is no Superman, and no one in history is left to provide an example for those with amazing abilities to one day become superheroes. Due to the resulting temporal paradox, Time Trapper is able to obliterate the Justice League in the present. This shows his immense power and ability. This scares Dawnstar and Karate Kid, and they withdraw, unwilling to take the chance of disappearing forever. The Legion plunders the world without the Justice League, plundering banks and other cash reserves. They were destroying Washington in absence of the Justice League. The teenage heroes understand that by preventing Lex Luthor's previous counterpart from visiting the 31st century, they may create their own paradox and prevent him from stealing the Eternity Glass and going back in time. With the help of Karate Kid, Luthor's younger self is released from his captivity by using Dawnstar's tracking skills to find him there. Because he resides outside of time, the Time Trapper is immune to this paradox. Now, that Luthor's counterpart has been set free, the Time Trapper is free to act in whatever way he pleases since Luthor is no longer his master. This makes him even more wild and free. The Time Trapper attempts to reshape the present world in his image while banishing the future Luthor from existence. He is faced by Superman and the Justice League, who have returned to their place due to the absence of Luthor. However, the Justice League cannot defeat Time Trapper because he has grown much too powerful. In an attempt to defeat the Time Trapper, Karate Kid finds out that the Trapper is entirely made of dark matter. This gives him the idea that the Trapper can be defeated using Dawnstar's light-based abilities. Dawnstar attacks Time Trapper, and the League defeats him. When the Eternity Glass is turned back, Time Trapper is once more imprisoned.
The Time Trapper! He's made of dark matter!
What makes Time Trapper such a serious threat? The Time Trapper is a Darkseid class enemy. He does not need physical strength since he is the corporeal embodiment of entropy and can access time's power. With his immense temporal power, Time Trapper may transfer beings across the timeline, age or de-age them to death, or transform them into protoplasmic slime. He can even turn them into bones or ashes. He can even travel across time and freeze it or change it. A time-traveling Superman was kept out of the 21st century by the Trapper using his ability to erect a temporal force barrier. He was able to create an identical Earth and Krypton to recently destroyed Earth 1 universe by slicing through time to the post-crisis DC universe, creating a pocket universe. This is just how impressive his abilities of time manipulation are. In order to link this pocket world with the late 30th century, he also distorted the whole time stream. It was subsequently discovered that the Time Trapper had pruned his duplicate world such that only Krypton and Earth supported life. In other words, he had removed the Guardians of the Universe, the New Gods, and other entities from his replica. The Iron Curtain of Time, which is a temporal barrier that forbids time travel, is possibly his most well-known invention. The Time Trapper is also capable of levitation, size shifting, telekinesis, telepathy, and teleportation. He is undoubtedly one of the most potent villains in the DC universe with his abilities. The Time Trapper is an undefeated and one of the most powerful supervillains in the DC comicverse. He is time in itself. He can manipulate just about every aspect of him and has come so close to defeating the Justice League and the Legion of Superheroes. This supervillain is one of the most fascinating characters that we have seen so far. It is really interesting to see how close the superheroes come to losing to him and how well his identity is concealed even now. He has been mentioned in the Arrowverse and an ongoing Flash series in recent events. It wouldn't be too far-fetched to hope that we see him in the series soon enough. It would be quite interesting to see how the Flash manages to defeat the Time Trapper. Considering that the Trapper can pretty much slow down time and catch the Flash quite easily, let us know your thoughts on the character in the Flash series. With that being said, if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.
Time Trapper, time's up.